Rabbi Moshe Hauer is the executive vice president of the OU. Before that, he was rabbi of Congregation Bnai Jacob Shaarei in Baltimore for 26 years. Rabbi Hauer is of the conviction that unlike a scholar in residence or one-time speaker, a rabbi speaking career is a long game.
When you're a scholar in residence, you have one chance to talk to people. You try to wow them. A rabbi is a long game. He's there with them week after week after week.
And real healthy change occurs over the course of many years.
I'm cautious about the term transformational because a person cannot be transformed every week. A person has to actually be stable, and they have to grow, and they have to deepen, and they have to broaden.
He's a big believer in varying your drasha style.
Why should we just always be trying to throw a hard ball, which is getting people to change? Ideally, we have like a generation of communicating with people. Mix your pitches.
Sometimes that can even mean abandoning the formal structure of your drasha in favor of just conversing and connecting.
That's something that should be on the rabbi's goal list. I want to just connect with them. I want to communicate with them. I want to share.
But above all, a rabbi mustn't lock himself into a stale or predictable pattern of drasha.
We need to give insight. We need to give people something that they didn't know before. Don't be tired and predictable.
And the need for not just short bursts of Torah and inspiration, but longer drashas that build and take people on a journey.
A good drasha is a journey. You take people somewhere in the drasha. You can't take people on a journey in 3 minutes.
Last but not least, we talk about the several themes that a rabbi should keep coming back to over and over the course of his rabbinate.
Every rabbi has one speech. You have one speech. And just every week, they give it a little differently. They give it from a different source. They give it from a different angle. But every rabbi has one speech. The earlier in your career that you figure out what that speech is, that you name what that speech is, the better you're going to be at delivering.
I learned so much from my interview with Rabbi Moshe Hauer, and I'm sure you will too. So now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Rabbi Moshe Hauer.
First of all, thank you. Thank you for your interest and for what you are doing. I'm cautious about the term transformational because a person cannot be transformed every week. A person has to actually be stable, and they have to grow, and they have to deepen, and they have to broaden. And so the term transformational, which is a term, and there's a time and in life and a time and a place for the transformational. Everybody knows what the Rambam writes about in Hilchos Tshuva. I'm not the same person. That's transformation defined. But arguably, when the Rambam's writing about that, he's not talking about something that somebody does even once a year. We don't transform once a year. We improve, we deepen, we make ourselves better, we make ourselves stronger. In the way I would try to view the conveying of Torah, and of course the modalities are different between shiurim and lectures and drashos on Shabbos, but the thrust in a certain sense is the same. And that thrust I find most to encapsulate in the words Torah's Chaim. And Torah's Chaim means a number of things, but it's on the most basic level, what I would discuss is a Torah that is relevant to how we live our lives. A Torah that is relevant to how we live our lives. And therefore our task when trying to convey in whatever time we have, whether it is that captive audience moment of the drasha, the speech on Shabbos morning or Yontiv, or whether it's the more expansive slots where you're speaking to people who are going out of their way to come specifically for that. They're not captive audiences. They are chosen. They're choosing to come to this shiur or that shiur, is to provide them something which Torah has no problem providing, that speaks to them in their life, where they are, not in a cheap way, not in a pedestrian way, but in a way which is real, which is deep, which is profound. One of the ideas which which I feel is the charge of a person, especially in the captive audience slot, is, of the drasha, is the way I always say it to people is that if people walk to shul thinking about something or talking to the person they're walking with about something, and they walk home from shul thinking and talking about something, and in between they sit there while you talk to them, while you speak to them, and you don't speak about what's on their mind. You're telling them the Torah has nothing to say about that which you are focused on. And that means that you're saying, in other words, that the Torah is not relevant. Now, caveat, if it happens to be that your local team is playing in the Super Bowl, and that's what you're talking about on the way to shul and the way home from shul, okay, so like maybe you want to make some cute reference to show like you know where your people are, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you should be speaking about. But I'm talking about the genuine issues, the genuine existential issues of being a person, of being a parent, of being a spouse, of being a child, of being a Jew in the 21st century in the United States, and in a Jew at a time like this. That we have to get under the skin of people, speak to them, and help the Torah impact their life. So is that transformational? I believe that the cumulative effect of that is absolutely transformational. Am I aiming to transform people's lives every time we speak to them? In that, no. Grow, deepen, insight, help them think more clearly, help them gain from the or which is Torah, the light which is Torah, which can help illuminate, the issues and challenges which they're dealing with.
So you would say that the goal is more cumulative over time, the small drip, like Rabbi Akiva.
Yeah, I would like, like Rabbi Akiva. I would like to share with you a cute anecdote, which actually to me was very, very affirming. Like rabbis are supposed to make jokes, too. You're supposed to do that as a way of making yourself approachable. The Gemara says Rava, right? So you told me you have a background in comedy, but every rabbi has to have a foreground in comedy, right? They have to some degree to be able to warm out. So there was one time where I began my drasha by saying that I want to like understand what I was doing right and what I was doing wrong. So we actually surveyed the members. And we asked them what were the 3 most impactful speeches that they heard from the rabbi over the past 2 years. And the answer
was it 2 years into your rabbinate, and 2 years into
no. It was many years, and it was fictional. And this was fictional. But I said that we did this, and we said, and the answers came back remarkably, incredibly consistent. Everybody said, "I don't remember," so I said, so therefore, given that feedback, I'm going to do something which I never do. And that is, I want to repeat something which I said to you a few months ago, because as I thought about what I need to share this Shabbos, the truth is that that's the most relevant message. Okay, so I did that, and a very fine, very very wonderful regular attendee, a woman in the shul, thoughtful, intelligent, came over to me after davening, and she said, Rabbi, thank you very much. She says, I want you to know, we may not remember what you said, but we know what you're saying. And that, to me, that was very profound. And what that means is that it's an ongoing process. There's such a difference between being a scholar in residence, somebody who's going on the speaking circuit, and being the rabbi of a kehillah. When you're a scholar in residence, you have one chance to talk to people. Okay, so you try to give them something, you try to wow them, you try to do something that will land, with impact. A rabbi is a long game. He's there with them week after week after week. And the process is really just to somehow share and open up a way of life, a way of living, a way of thinking, a way of approaching Torah, a way of bringing Torah as the definitive impact in your life. And it's not about what you said, it's about what you're saying. And one really ought to say also, it's way more about what you're doing and how you're living than what you're saying, or it might come out as how you're saying it rather than what it is that you're saying, because as we know, much more powerful than anything we say is our personal example.
Yeah. So I'm going to quote Rabbi Goldstein when he brought your name up. He said that this was something just in passing, but he said your drasha should be something that you can't take into a bathroom. I mean, it has to have some Torah, token, and it shouldn't just be motivational or I don't know exactly what he was referring to, but it should have Torah token. On the other end of the spectrum, some schools you go into, and it's kulo Torah. What I mean is that it's lumdus. There's no real messages there. It's pilpul. So where being those two opposite ends of the spectrum, how would you advise someone to where he should park himself? Does it depend on the congregation? Does it depend on the kehillah? Does it depend on the rub? Like what would you say? Is there an ideal?
There certainly is variation between shuls because, the Chazal taught us, people have different interests. Person can only learn where their heart desires. People have a different interests, different appetites, different things that they are interested in. So there certainly is variation. There certainly is variation. The principle which Rabbi Goldstein was referring to was that you're a rabbi, and your first job, you get that title because you're considered someone who has studied Torah and can give over Torah. And while you have many tasks and many responsibilities, but that's a primary one. And in many situations, those minutes where you're speaking to them, it could be that in fact that's their chance for Torah. They had a learning seder before davening. They're having two chavrusas in the afternoon, right? And this is just a message, but whatever messages we do in any case, we're there. We have, hopefully we earn chachmas achayim, wisdom about life from other sources that help us amplify. But Torah as a source has to be there. So yes, I did and do share that. I think like Torah has to be an important part. Should it just be Torah? Should it just be a pilpul? So I would go back again to the notion of the rabbi is the long game. If the rabbi is not messaging to his community about the issues which are the real issues in life for them, not talking about like pontificating about Afghanistan, talking about the real issues of life that's relevant for them as a member of Klal Yisrael, then they're not providing a necessary hadracha for the community. Presumably, every community needs to be guided that way. Every member of a community needs it. Some seek it, some welcome it, some will be deaf to it. It's that's the nature of speaking to a large group or to any group. But is that sort of fundamental to the expectation, to the mission? I would think yes. But that doesn't mean that every Shabbos that's what the person would do or that's what the person must do. We talk about mixing our pitches. And so, for example, a rabbi could sometimes and needs to sometimes speak with a specific charge, a mission. Right? I'm getting up this week, and my goal is that as a result of what I say, this is what's going to happen. This is what people will do. This is what people will undertake. Now, can you do that every week? Rabbi Steinberg, can I get up every week and sit to tell people, do this? Like, they can feel battered after a while. If every week, right, on Shabbos Parshas Lech Lecha, we're going to get up and we're going to tell them, Avram Avinu went to Eretz Yisrael, you have to be thinking about when you're going to live the dream and the opportunity of the modern times to be able to live in Eretz Yisrael. And in Parshas Vayera, you're going to speak to them about how they have to do Achnasas Orchim. And in Parshas Vayesara, you're going to tell them that they have to be a member of the Chevra Kadisha, or they're going to have to spend their spare time making Shidduchim. And in Parshas Toldos, where you're going to speak to them about Tefillah, Vayeter Yitzchak Lashem Lenochach Ishto Hakol Kol Yaakov, right? Like they'll be dizzy. Like how many things can you grow in? How many things can you work on? So number one, like anybody who's working on something, you want to work on something, you got to put 10,000 hours into it, right? You got to focus. So if you want to work on something, come back with messages which build one upon another in a similar direction where people can grow with you instead of taking them in different directions. And secondly, don't always tell people what to do. The Torah is brilliant in and of itself. It's the ultimate wisdom. And is there anything wrong with sometimes using the drasha to just say, hey, here's a piece of Torah. Wow. I've been studying this story for my whole life, or for the past 20 years, and I just got a new insight, and it's an exciting insight, and it tells me something. Or, there's a fascinating new development in the world. Synthetic meat. I don't know, like whatever it is. It's not like deeply emotional. It's not about personal growth. It's not about the challenges which we're facing. But hey, Torah speaks to that too, and this is how the Torah looks at it, or here's a way that the Torah looks at it, and here's something fascinating. And why should we just always be trying to throw a hard ball, which is getting people to change? We have a whole curriculum. We have a whole course. We have a whole semester. We have a whole year. Ideally, we have like a generation of communicating with people. Mix your pitches. Mix your pitches. If you're giving a one-time speech, you might have your structure. It has to go this way. I have to have an anecdote. I have to have a takeaway. I have to have this like specific thing. I'm not convinced that that's the way it needs to be in a drasha, in a shul, on a regular Shabbos. There's room for that kind of speech, and there's also room to just engage, to converse with your kihila. If we could borrow from the way we view tefillah, what's a prayer? We talk to Hashem. Sometimes we're supposed to speak to Hashem. We have a very specific bakasha, right? We have a specific request. We have something which we want. And then there's another term for tefillah, which is sicha. And sicha means just conversation. And we know HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Chazal tell us in many different ways, Hashem gives us needs, so we'll come and talk to him. But there's value to connect. That's something that should be on the rabbi's goal list. I want to just connect with them. I want to communicate with them. I want to share.
Yeah. Is part of maybe the role of a drasha is for the rabbi to connect with the community? Would you say is that one of the goals?
For sure.
And
it's an opportunity to connect, to make them feel like he knows where they are, that he understands them, that he's speaking to them, not over them, not past them, but he's speaking to them.
And how much would you say, in terms of, there seems to be a trend towards rabbis kind of revealing parts of their personality, their maybe their own personal struggles or challenges as a means to be relatable and say, we're all in this together. Versus the other type where maybe in a previous door it was more, there was there's you and I'm kind of above you. In order to lead, I need to be on a higher pedestal than you. Whereas there seems to be a trend, maybe other Rabbanim are leading from the middle.
Yeah, I think anything could be done to an extreme, and There were people, I think, someone who did it, who was definitely from a previous generation, but spoke a lot about, being self-revelatory, was Rav Soloveitchik. He was extremely self-revelatory about his feelings and his emotional experiences, in his speeches. And people do that, and it offers a texture to the person in front of you, to their life. And it can be done to an extreme. It can be done to an extreme which makes the speech too much about the rabbi. There's a rule of thumb which is good for anybody who speaks or writes, is that if they're using the word "I" too much, it's not good. It's not what it's supposed to be. The rabbinate is not supposed to be about the rabbi. It's supposed to be the rabbi is as transparent as possible, as looms as small as possible. It's about the right thing. It's about the word of Hashem. It's about helping people think about themselves. And sometimes there could be like an obsessive focus on self-revelation that is maybe unhealthy. Unhealthy. There's also it's also a fair question about striking the balance between sharing one's humanity, which is important, and at the same time, not letting people also look up, because people need to look up. I mean, it's not a rabbi question; it's even like a parental question. Would parents share with their child every one of their aspects of challenge, every single thing which they're struggling with? It's not so simple for them to do that. There is a value to sometimes to looking up, and at the same time, if parents will be a black box as far as their personal lives, and they quote unquote never make mistakes and never have anything to apologize for, and so on and so forth, they're putting up a wall, which I don't know if in any generation was effective, other than to be a barrier to helping think past things. So it's a fair question. It's an important question, and it's the answer isn't. I don't think it's a binary answer. It's not like a yes or no. It's like we have to manage it right, manage it well.
Right. So, if you could put yourself back to the beginning of when you became a Rav, how did you approach the drasha? How did you? I mean, you said your father was a Rav as well. Did you model yourself after the way he spoke when you first started out? Did you have role models or inspirations that you drew from?
My father, Zefran Levracha, was certainly a model for me in many ways, including, yes, I heard him and listened to him for growing up, and I then had other models. Baruch Hashem was exposed to a lot of people and continue to like to be exposed to a lot of people. I hesitate to say that model yourself after a specific thing. We have a lot of influences in our life, and again, my father was a profound influence. Some of my teachers were profound influences. People who I read and learned from were profound influences. My father's greatest influence, I think, was that he was always thirsty for Torah, always interested and eager to learn more Torah, and he shared the Torah almost naturally as something which was, Al Timna Tov Mi Balav. There's something beautiful. The Torah belongs to everybody. Share it, and that was profound. He was a fantastically eloquent and elegant speaker, and it's hard to say this came, that came, from this source or from that source, because in the end we find our own way and we find our own voice, but with heavy influences. And I urge people, it's good to get exposed to different influences. You grow, you evolve, you change, you see new ways of doing things, you see how people get through. Very valuable, very valuable. The worst thing is to get tired in this thing and to like be this, to have this algorithm. Excuse me, I know like you're part of this goal is to systematize things, but you gotta, the algorithm shouldn't be a strict algorithm, and certainly the material shouldn't be old material. To the extent that the rabbi is alive and fresh in their engagement with Torah, that's the extent to which they're going to get through. That's the extent to which they're going to get through.
Hey there, fellow podcast listeners. Are you enjoying the show so far? I hope you're finding value in all the insightful conversations coming your way, and I'm grateful for all the time we get to spend together. Now, I have a small favor to ask, one that can make a big difference. Your feedback is invaluable to me. By taking a moment to rate and review this podcast, you're not only showing your support, but also helping it reach new heights. Picture this: more reviews means more visibility. More visibility means more incredible guests lining up to share their stories and expertise with you. So, if you're enjoying what you're hearing, how about making some magic happen? Scroll down, tap that rating, jot down a few words. It's that simple. Your action today can pave the way for even greater experiences tomorrow. Thanks for your support. Now let's get back to the program. What about in terms of a structure, the way that you go about structuring a drasha? Do you have a specific approach to it? Or again, is it kind of, mixing up the pitches? Is there a specific way that you like to open or to ask a kasha, or do you try to tie the end back to the beginning? Do you have any specific structure in regards to that?
You want to know, again, first of all, rabbis are busy folks. And many times congregations or people who observe congregation rabbis think that on Wednesday morning, they sit down and they start preparing their speech and they spend, multiple hours until Shabbos, doing that. There may be some who are able to do that, but many rabbis are very, very busy tending to the individual needs of members of their community and tending to the communal needs. And they don't always have the luxury to sit down with a map and a sketch and so on and so forth, to be able to do so. So they have to find a way to be able to get there and to be effective. A good speech, generally speaking, you're supposed to sit down at the beginning and start off and say, this is what I want people to come away with. And that's a very, very important thing and a starting point. And one also has to find a way, I think, really to get under people's skin, to have something which will make whatever it is, again, certainly in the message department, if we're going to talk about those, to go back to whether we're going to call it transformational or educational, and to be able to get to people. And the way you get to people is by demonstrating understanding of them, and by opening them up. And opening them up is done with warmth of connection. Opening them up could be by an emotional story that opens the heart of people, and fundamentally, again, illustrations through story or through divrei Chazal that hit people where they are in terms of what it is. So, in terms of a very specific structure, we're going to start with this, we're going to go to this, we're going to that. I'm not going to share one with you because I don't build the dress that way. But are there ingredients that you want to have in every talk, which is meant to stimulate action? Yes, you want to have the clear goal in terms of action, what you want people to come away with, action or emotion, change that people come away with. You want to have a path to open them up emotionally around it, and you want to be able to provide them with substance, with real substance, something from Torah Hashem to be the essence, in a certain sense, of how you're equipping them to be able to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on using secular sources, secular stories, Um, yeah, I'll give you an example. When I was watching the Shaarei game on ambition. So you handed out cards. I don't know if you remember that, but you handed out a bunch of cards, and I remember expecting it to be I don't know, something from some motivational source or something like that, and it was from the Pietzner Rebbe, and it was about it was cool Torah, and I didn't see from start to finish at the end of this year, but I'm wondering if you ever mix in any sources that are not Torah into your drashas.
I certainly did and certainly do. I certainly did and certainly do. Um, I there can sometimes be a every crowd. Let's go back here for a second. Every crowd and every group is different, and and there are places where being able to cite a secular source is necessary as a calling card. And if the rabbi is only speaking Torah, it could be that members of that community will say, okay, he's being a predictable rabbi, and I don't relate to that predictable rabbi. But on the other hand, if he's going to quote Collins, or he's going to quote Ariely or something like that, so that's secular literature, and I know who they are, and that's a point of connection. And in a situation like that, so obviously it's valuable, just like a joke can be a hook, a quote can be a hook, and by all means, that's fine. There's also, without any question, there's sometimes perspective which is to be gained from secular sources that help us see things and understand things. Chachma bagoyim ta'amin, and it is important and valuable for a rabbi to be well versed and well read, and and uh, and able to do that. But I didn't view it ever in my own situation as a necessary critical element. The speech must cite secular sources. The speech must cite Torah sources. The speech must be built with Torah at its center. That's our opportunity to teach Torah, to make Torah relevant, to let Torah guide and inspire our lives. Torah is the ultimate of kedusha. That's non-negotiable. Secular sources, like jokes, like stories, like everything else, can be a valuable tavlin, can be a valuable spice, and depending on the crowd, this way or that way. And sometimes, by the way, they can also make people uncomfortable, right? Depending on the crowd, one has to know and one has to understand. And there's also wisdom. There's also wisdom to be gained in the Tnuas HaMusar, which is a must study work on the Musar movement. He writes that the Alter of Kelm used to spend a lot of money, relatively speaking, to buy psychology textbooks. And he said that there was nothing in there that wasn't in the Torah, but sometimes reading it helped him to be able to crystallize it and to be able to find it. And it's true for all of us. It's true for all of us. There are formulations and understandings that we can get from these places, and by all means, I I think there are, like with everything else in the rabbinic field, there are extremes. There are uh, people who will never, and maybe it's fitting for their community. And then there are people who are spending way more time deriving from secular sources than building up their Torah sources. And that latter part is one which would concern me a little bit more. I think again we want to maintain our authenticity as people who are constant students, and via being good students and vibrant students of Torah, also sharing Torah.
So when you had your drasha to give every week, Did you have a process? Some people say they go through Shnei Mikra and then they wait for something to kind of pop out at them. Was there a process that you had specifically, or did you have a message in mind and then go looking to support it within the parsha itself?
It depended. I did not have a single method for this. There are times when I have to speak about this Shabbos. I have to speak about this issue. I have to speak about this point. I have to get across this message, and then your task is to build something towards that message in a way which is serious and genuine and intellectually honest. If it's a week of nothing specific going on in the world, nothing specific elevated on people's minds, not a specific, it's not the first week of school and it's not the first week of summer, and it's not Erev Yom Tov, and there's no simcha that speaks to the things. So sometimes you Maver Sedra, and let's see what it is. What do we want to do? What do we want to offer? Was there something that we put aside that needs to be addressed at some point in time, and this would be a perfect time to do it. But I would go back to the issue or to the framing which we used at the beginning of our discussion, which is the real question we should be asking ourselves on a regular basis is what's on the minds of the people, because that's the makom shaliva chafetz. That's where their heart desires. You want to address people's questions, quote unquote. So they're not asking you the question in a formal way, but what is it? What is the question? What's on their mind? And let's go there.
How would you know when you hit upon something that's on people's mind if it's not something that's a big topic that needs to be addressed? How do you know this is what I should speak about? That this is going to be relevant. Is it through the relationship with the kehillah? Is that
if you're speaking to people on a regular basis and you're interacting with people on a regular basis, you've got to be able to pick up on it. You got to be able to pick up on it. And what is also worth noting is sometimes you want them to think about something that they're not thinking about yet, but you know that when you surface it, when you raise the issue, it'll land. You have a sense. Okay, they haven't been thinking about it. They haven't been talking about it, but this will help them too.
Mm-hmm. So I have two questions, kind of contemporary issues. One is attention spans. In your experience, have attention spans gone down?
I think it's documented that attention spans have gone down. I don't think it's a debate.
Well, some people would argue that people are just more selective with what they pay attention to. But I think movies now that they've actually increased. They're up to 2 hours 20 minutes, 2 hours 30 minutes. That it's not the attention spans that are down. It's just people are more distracted.
Yes, I think same thing. I think that I don't have the latest on this, but I think also like how often on the movie they change the picture that's on the screen is way up. They have to, in order to hold people, they have to constantly move it around because otherwise they'll be distracted. They can't dwell on anything for too long. Yeah, that's documented.
So how would you advise a Rav to battle that, to battle the shrinking attention span or the distraction? How do you get through?
To some degree, we have to deal with it. And to some degree, we have to deal with it in the sense that it's a reality, and people will feel like they either, number one, they won't have the attention, or number two, they have this feeling that they can't. I can't be in shul for more than X amount of time on Shabbos morning. I can't. And it doesn't matter if at any point in time in that shul experience, I'm not bored. I'm enjoying it, from beginning to end. But in the end, I can't say that I was in shul for longer than X. Are you familiar with that phenomenon? I mean, it's there. It's a reality, and it's something which, what are you going to do? Right? You have to fight it. But on the other hand, I would like to just share the following in the context of what you're speaking about, what we are speaking about together. And that is, I'm a rabbi who has a congregational rabbi, which I'm not at this point. I spoke on the quote unquote on the longer side. On the longer side, I was not a person who typically gave a 7-minute drasha or a 10-minute drasha. I gave a longer drasha. I, you know, 20 minutes would be normal. Would be normal. There were times when sort of like I would announce what the drasha was about in advance and was about something important and would be longer than that. And there were times when it was very short, shorter than that. But that was more the exception than the rule because it just so happened that in our shul, just the population, the men and women, many of them really they wanted a drasha. It wasn't like the rabbi needed to get it off his chest. It was they wanted it. They came. However, the following. But so in the world of WhatsApps or whatever else it is, I started like many others, sharing divrei Torah, never longer than 3 minutes, or so. So there's always the wisecracker who says, Rabbi, I see you can speak for 3 minutes, as if the reason why you were speaking longer was because you couldn't bring yourself to speak shorter, or because you. But here's the thing, and this is what I think is very, very important, and part of the quote unquote, not just the art, but the experience of the drasha. And that is, if you want to give somebody I think you would say, you want to ping somebody, you want to share with them a quick idea, a jolt. You can do it in a minute. You can certainly do it in 3. No problem. And they'll walk away. If you were really good and you had a good thought, they walk away with a thought. But a good drosha is a journey. You take people somewhere in the drosha. You can't take people on a journey in 3 minutes. To take people, you have to build it. You have to build it. It's an emotional and intellectual experience. And you have to bring people someplace else. You have to bring them in. It takes time to do that. It takes time to do that. You can't just do that on express. You have to connect, and therefore that's something which should not be removed. There is such a thing. The loud congregants are the ones who complain that the drasha is too long, that davening is too long. There are others who say, I'm coming here in order to experience something. You don't have transformational seconds, right? There's an interaction which requires time and connection to the content and to the experience and to the place which you're trying to take people and feelings. And there needs to be a place for that. There needs to be a place for that. And if a rabbi's congregation is dominated by those who feel that davening has to end at X amount of time, so I would say that then they have to figure out a way, quote unquote, around that. In other words, they could submit to it and just be giving them little thoughts all the time, little jolts and little ideas. But if they want to be able to connect, so maybe it's on a Labor Day, maybe it's once a month after davening. So you can be out of shul in 1 hour and 50 minutes or 2 hours or whatever else it is. But if you want to go on a journey, I'm going to be talking about X. I'm going to be talking about this issue, talking about how we relate to the situation in Israel, how you relate to the challenges of living an affordable life, in Orthodoxy. How do you relate to the growth of your community, the change in your community, whatever it is. And we'll do it after davening, or once a month we'll do it during davening, but you'll be forewarned, right? Yeah, usually I'm giving you the ADD version. I'm giving you like the 3 minute, the 7 minute, but once a month, get ready to sit down and we're going to have a serious talk. You don't have to do that every week. You don't. But there is a place for that kind of a drasha, where you take people together on a journey.
You'd say these the short, little bursts are more like fast food versus the
Yeah,
You know,
it's a good man.
yeah. Um, so I always like to ask towards the end of the conversation if you had only two pieces of advice to set up a Rav for success when he approaches his speaking. What would those two pieces of advice be to set him up for success? You know, two most important things to keep in mind going forward. Maybe not necessarily a practice; it could be practice, but more of a mindset.
Okay. So if I had to choose two, um, so I'll tell you the two which are in my head now. I don't know. Maybe if I thought about it more, I would choose another two. But I'll tell you two, which I think are very important. Number one is don't be predictable. Don't be predictable. If you have minutes to teach people some Torah, the Torah should not tell them, oh, now I see from this that you're supposed to be a nice person. I knew already I'm supposed to be a nice person. I knew already I'm not supposed to be like an overindulgent Naval Bishus HaTorah. We need to give insight. We need to give insight. We need to give people something that they didn't know before. Don't be tired and predictable. Make sure that you give something which is mavrik, which is bright, which opens people that, oh, it's food for thought. It gets them to think differently. That's number one. Number two is something which I learned actually from a friend who wasn't an Orthodox rabbi. He was a conservative rabbi. And he told me something that he learned from a teacher, a speech instructor, I guess a homiletics instructor at the seminary. I don't know who it was. I don't remember who it was. And he said to them the following. He said, every rabbi has one speech. You have one speech. And just every week, they give it a little differently. They give it from a different source. They give it from a different angle. But every rabbi has one speech. The earlier in your career that you figure out what that speech is, that you name what that speech is, the better you're going to be at delivering. And I think that's brilliant. I think it's a bit of an oversimplification. A rabbi may have more than one, may have two or three, but each of us have specific themes which are essential. If you go back to that story of the woman in the lobby after davening, right, not what you said, but what you're saying. There are things that you're saying all the time. Identify them, be clear about them, and then figure out how you're going to deliver those messages each week. But drill down on what your message is.
Kind of like the Hu Haya Omer, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So I don't know if I'm going to be predictable here, but now I'm about to ask you what were your messages or message?
My messages were focused very much on Torah's Chaim, and that the Torah has something to really, really teach us about life, and that's why Torah is a way to not just do Hashem's wishes, but to make great people. Right? The Torah is the tool to make the Tzelem Elokim into the Tzelem Elokim, into making the human being godlike. And Torah is about making great human beings. And therefore, our job, as we are trying to uncover the gems of the Torah, are ones which make us really far bigger and far greater people. And another core value and core message is a message around the value that Jews have for each other, to find the piece of complement of recognizing that we don't have it down ourselves, that there are lots of different Jews. We could spend time arguing with each other. We can also spend time harnessing each other's strengths and finding ways to do that. There are of course lines. There are definitely lines that we have to preserve as well. But there's a big value. There's a tremendous value in figuring out how we can be a Klal Yisrael.
How
Okay.
long did it take you to hit on those messages? Were they how did they evolve? Was it
I don't know how to answer the question. I don't know. I don't know. I didn't think about it before this. I had this conversation with my friend. When exactly that conversation happened, I'm trying to remember. Maybe it was 15 years ago. I don't. I was at it for a while before drilling it down to that. But it's who you are, and everybody has their own who you are. Everybody has that.
Shkoach? Thank you very, very much.
Okay. Hatzlacha,
Okay,
nice to meet you.
You've been listening to The Maggid Method, and I'm Daniel Steinberg. There's a secret that great public speakers know. Did you know there's a method for cutting straight through to an audience's heart, grabbing their attention and holding it, and making a memorable impact with your presentation? The best speakers in the world utilize it, and now you can too, every time you get up to speak. Download your free Maggid Method of Public Speaking template at maggidmethod.com, maggidmethod.com. The Maggid Method will teach you how to find your authentic voice, craft meaningful presentations, manage people's attention, and build unbreakable bonds with your audience. Go to maggidmethod.com and download your free copy now.
If you're giving a one-time speech, you might have your structure. It has to go this way. I have to have an anecdote. I have to have a takeaway. I have to have this specific thing. I'm not convinced that that's the way it needs to be in a drasha, in a shul, on a regular shas. There's room for that kind of speech, and there's also room to just engage, to converse with your kihila. But there's value to connect. That's something that should be on the rabbi's goal list. I want to just connect with them. I want to communicate with them. I want to share.